This week's challenge: you don't need religion to distinguish between right and wrong. Well, there's a number of things that were said in this challenge. One, of course, was the claim that religion is kind of at the root of most of the heinous crimes of humanity.
At first, I thought this was merely a random claim made by Brett from Stand to Reason, no direct link being given to the challenge in question. A short rummage around, however, on their site did deliver results, and the supposed critique appears to be valid, being one found on the open edit source, Wiki How. Now, whilst the sourcing of the video could be greater, it is actually good to find some content which deals in actually discussing points made by actual people, even if I do not agree in totality with the way their views were expressed. What I mean by this is it's very difficult to quantify the statement, the majority of heinous crimes committed against people on this planet across all recorded history had their roots on religious beliefs, and due to this reason makes it yet more difficult to test due to the number of factors. One such example would be, what do we take into account? Do we draw out a model to even the numbers of dead based upon the different types of weapons available at the time? The more potent the weapon, the more likely to die. A better statement would be, a large number of heinous crimes committed against people on this planet across all recorded history had their roots on religious beliefs. From here I can actually list examples throughout history such as the KKK lynchings, the Holocaust and the Crusades. So here is something that we can all possibly learn from.
And so right off the bat, I would say, no, that's actually not true. All we have to do is go back 1 century to see horrendous evil crimes, right? What many consider the bloodiest century in all of human history. And we don't find religious belief at the root of that. We actually find atheistic belief at the root of that.
See, there are a number of issues here. For starters, like the before mentioned weapon availability factor, i.e. do we consider the potency of weapons, we must also consider global populations. Steven Pinker wrote an excellent piece called The Decline of War. Now, whilst numbers such as 100 million dead during wartime in the previous century shock all of us to the bone, had we maintained the slaughter rates of our tribal ancestors, we would be looking at closer to 2 billion dead during wartime during the 20th century. But the issue doesn't merely stop there. You have structured a false dichotomy here, as is displayed by the very facts that you have claimed atheistic belief has led to atrocities. To claim as such, you would have to display the way in which an absence of theistic belief led these individuals or entire nations to commit actions of horrendous consequences, not merely that those conflicts were not religious in origin. Many of these wars were still carried out by predominantly religious nations, yet religion may not have been a core aspect to this war, having a direct impact. Other factors such as political alignment or philosophy or ideals, e.g. honour, could have resulted in these things as well. Whilst these do not count as religious caused atrocities, they do display how religion is not a fix against committing atrocities. Further complications then come in when we discuss cases which have non-religious roots, yet still have religious involvement, e.g. Bush's utilisation of religion when dealing with the Middle East during the turn of the 20th century into the 21st century. So the issue is a lot more complicated than you're pretending.
And so you look at Stalin and Lenin and...
Stalin was, by all semantics, a sort of atheist, yet there are complications as always. First of all, however, nowhere did his apparent atheism lead to his actions, for an absence of belief is incapable of doing so. This was also displayed by the fact that after removing the clergy, he reinstated his own clergy. Had he wanted to cleanse the Soviet Union of God, then surely he would not allow for the regrowth of the Russian Orthodox Church. which leads me on to my second point, which is that Stalin saw himself as almost a form of demigod in all intents and practice. This sort of concept hasn't been that big in the West since the Age of Kings, yet we have seen considerable amount of these cases in countries such as Japan, whose head of state, aka emperor, was viewed as a divine being. As for Lenin, he was the leader of a political revolution. That political aspect is not just important, but core to his very actions.
Pol Pot and Mao and...
Just as with Stalin, Mao started a personality cult founded around him as the ruler above all others. Whilst it may lack the apparitional form of a deity, it still follows the same structure of power and methodologies as religion. This is not the position or goal for the majority of Western secularism or humanism. The organic lack of religious affiliation has grown from the desire to be free of totalitarian authorities, which are not up for question. They are bastions of liberty, and the methodologies of Stalin and Mao conflict with that idea. Pol Pot was similar, yet he held to other religious aspects such as fate or an afterlife. A quote from Prince Norodom Sihanouk, which is often shortened by Christians, states in full, Pol Pot does not believe in a god, but he thinks that heaven, destiny, wants him to guide Cambodia in the way he thinks is best for Cambodia. That is to say, the worst. Pol Pot is mad, you know, like Hitler.
Hitler, I think there's a good case to be made that was not religious belief, it was atheistic belief, okay?
Hitler was not an atheist. What is more is that he wasn't even anti-Christian either, as many modern-day Christians like to pretend. Whilst Hitler was critical of the clergy, particularly those who were differing in their views to him, Hitler ultimately was a Christian. Hitler was open for the Christian faith in supporting it and combating the supposed enemies of the faith and of the Trinity. However, such quotes as, "Our epoch will certainly see the end of the disease of Christianity. It will last another 100 years, 200 years perhaps. My regret will have been that I couldn't, like whoever the prophet was, behold the promised land from afar," seems to disagree with my claim. The issue is that all these quotes come from the same single source, Hitler's Table Talk. What is more, they all come from the German to French to English translation of Hitler's Table Talk, done by Trevor, Roper and Genound. Here is what the German version translated directly into the English version states, as is shown in Picker and Jockman's version. "I have never found pleasure in maltreating others, even if I know it is not possible to maintain oneself in the world without force. Life is granted only to those who fight the hardest. It is the law of life. Defend yourself. The time in which we live has the appearance of the collapse of this idea. It can still take 100 or 200 years. I am sorry that, like Moses, I can only see the promised land from afar." Hitler was very likely Christian and was certainly no atheist, as displayed here through his belief in Moses and the Promised Land, as well as the fact that he closed down the German Freethinkers League and had it constructed into a church. But there's something even more important than the beliefs of one man in charge, and that is the beliefs of the rest of the German people. The church had been at the core of anti-Semitism in Europe for centuries, which allowed these atrocities to commence. You've got nowhere to hide with Hitler.
So there's a lot more we could say on that, but that's not where I want to spend most of my time with this challenge. But just off the bat, I want to say, no, I would disagree with that point. Okay, now here's the central claim, I think, is that you don't need religious belief to distinguish from right and wrong. To which I would say, yes, that's true. You don't need to be a religious believer to know right from wrong. And if you are a skeptic, an atheist, a secular person, and you've interacted with Christians on this, you'll know that most Christians who are philosophically trained, apologists, we would never make that claim, that you have to be religious to know moral truth. In fact, any person who believes in the teaching of the Bible, if they look at Romans 2, the Bible even says that the non-believer has God's law written on the human heart. God's law is written on every human heart, and therefore, even the Bible affirms that people who don't believe in God can know moral truth.
This is an unsubstantiated claim in the fact that it has never had any evidence of this being brought forward. It is only an argument from personal incredulity. B, this is objectively false. How do I tell? Compare the morality of believers and they all disagree, even within the same sect or church. Compare the morality between a theist and a secular ethicist, and again, you'll find a difference. Morality is not agreed upon, it is certainly not written into us. And C, this model fails to explain crime. If a person knew something was wrong and truly believed it to be wrong due to something being written into their very being, why would they then break this? If it is written into our heart, our very being, we lose free will, and along with that, you also lose the free will defense. If it is not dictating, then written into our hearts is a meaningless phrase and an assumption-burdened claim which is unnecessary. I could reach the same result with any other origin of morality, many times with far more basis than you just mentioned. E.g., biological empathy. I can actually show the mechanism and how this works, etc. I can show how it works up to a certain degree, and then beyond that it's up to us to socialize. Also, I have a question. If the instruction to live and how to live is written in our hearts, then what is the Bible for?
Okay, so this is where we need to make an important distinction, and it's a distinction between epistemology and metaphysics. Epistemology, our study of knowledge. Metaphysics, our study of reality. Okay, so the claim that you have to have certain beliefs, religious beliefs, to know moral truth is an epistemological claim. When it comes to what you can know morally, the view from the Christian is not that you need to believe in God to know what is right or wrong morally. In fact, you could be an atheist. You could not just totally deny God's existence, and I think you could be moral. You could know right from wrong. You could be more moral than me. You could be more moral than any Christian. Okay, so let's just clear that up. We have no problem with the claim that you know moral truth.
The fact is that the church isn't just redundant then. It gets a lot of stuff wrong, such as how it used to justify slavery and then segregation, how it classes women as lesser beings which must be obedient to man, and let's not even crack open the LGBT+ case, as that's just a whole nother storm on its own. These are not beliefs just held by individual believers, but internalized doctrines circulated among believers.
What we're after is the basis of morality itself. That's the metaphysical question. That's the question of where does this thing come from, morality, objective morality? What is the basis of objective morality? What's its foundation? What best explains it? So we see this thing in the world, that there are these objective moral truths, right? Of course, and that's part of this equation. You have to affirm that there are objective moral truths. I'm assuming that that's part of the assumption here in the challenge. So there are these objective moral truths, right? Torturing babies for fun is wrong. Raping women is morally wrong. These are objective moral truths. We discover them in the world around us, and we ask, where does such a thing come from? How do you get that? And let me just give you an analogy here. Look, do you have to believe in postmen? Do you have to believe in the mailman to get your mail out of the mailbox and read it? Well, of course not. You could believe that there are no mailmen, and you could still walk to your mailbox every day and pull out the mail. And you could read it. And you could deny the existence of mailmen, and mailwomen. Okay, to be politically correct here. But the question would still remain, what explains that mail in your mailbox? Where did that come from? That's the metaphysical question that we're after when it comes to this issue of right and wrong. We want to know, where does it come from? What's the best explanation for objective morality? And what the theist is going to argue is that God provides the best explanation for the existence of this thing. You can know it whether you affirm his existence or not. You can know right from wrong, but where does right and wrong come from? Now, on my view, the theist view, I think the reason why you cannot know right from wrong is because God has given you that moral equipment. He's made you in his image, so you can affirm moral truths without affirming his existence. But this stuff, morality, where does it come from? That's what we're after. So the claim isn't that you have to be religious to know right from wrong, but in order for there to be anything like right and wrong, objective moral truths, objective moral laws, objective moral obligations, you have to have a proper basis or explanation or foundation for those things. And that's the claim.
Well, here is the thing. We have fields of science which are actively investigating the source of our human sense of morality, and the hypothesis of theistic origin just is not holding any water, mainly for the fact that God has yet to be proven to exist, and thus his apparent explanatory power equates to about as much as me claiming that leprechauns delivered my mail. Meanwhile, back in reality, social sciences such as psychology and sociology are drawing up various models of morality, as well as more questions on how much is innate and how much is environmental. Though they are not perfect, these theories are at least testable and show ability to hold far more than the before mentioned hypothesis of theistic origin. On top of this, I am fully capable of utilizing your own claims to falsify the origin of morality as being found in the God of the Bible. I'd like to replay a little clip of something you stated earlier.
So there are these objective moral truths, right? Torturing babies for fun is wrong. Raping women is morally wrong. These are objective moral truths.
Now, in utilizing your own ideas of objective morality, if I could display the character of God in the Bible as not matching the view that the slaughter of children for material gain or the raping of women as objectively wrong, I would effectively rule out the Christian God as the source for said moral code. God cannot simultaneously objectively push for infanticide and rape whilst objectively pushing against them. In Numbers 31, verses 15 through 18, we have the slaughter of the Midianite captives. These were the young boys or even infants and babies, and all the girls and the women who had already been captured by Moses and his forces. The passage reads, and I do quote, "Have you allowed all the women to live?" he asked them. They were the ones who followed Balaam's advice and enticed the Israelites to be unfaithful to the Lord in the Pur incident, so that a plague struck the Lord's people. Now kill all the boys and kill every woman who has ever slept with a man, but save for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man. Thus we can safely say, through the slaughter of every male child for the material gain, including land, as well as the systematic rape of the virgin girls who were forced into marriage by their captors who had just slaughtered their families, under God's word, if these actions are objectively detestable, this morality cannot come from the God of the Bible.
Now let's address this kind of final little bit of evidence, right, that this objector points to, and that's the animal kingdom, right? Animals don't have any religious beliefs, and yet they show evidence of knowing right from wrong. Well, I actually don't think you really want to go to the animal kingdom for your examples of morality. Because you could pick and choose and say, oh, here chimpanzees seem to cooperate and this is evidence of morality. And you could use that one example. But let's go to the whole animal kingdom. I mean, let's look at all the examples. So how about that male lion who kicks out that old male lion from his pride, takes over the females, and then goes around and kills all the little young lions that were, sired by the former lion, right? He wants to get those genes out of the gene pool. So does that give us any example for morality? Of course not. In fact, notice we don't use moral terms to describe animal behavior. A great white shark forcibly copulates with the female, but we don't call it rape, right? Because we realize there is a moral difference between the animal kingdom and us. And I don't think we want to derive moral oughts, moral laws, moral instruction from the animal kingdom. So that example fails in terms of supporting this claim that you don't need religion in order to give us morality. And I think we have answered another challenge.
Meanwhile, I feel you have in fact failed spectacularly. To compare all of the animal kingdom to humanity is fallacious. Not all animals share our social traits. A lion is a social animal, yet there are significant differences such as lack of high cognitive ability, which would allow for such things as invention and tool use. I'm not saying that lions cannot show acts in which we may identify moral behaviour when facing the peril of a fellow animal. Even rats display altruism in feeding or freeing trapped individuals. However, it is better to look at our closest ancestors, i.e. other great apes. We can see high-functioning social structures which are based around social cohesion and unity. Bonobos and chimpanzees are known to calm distressed members of their troop and to share food with individuals they share no blood ties with. The naturalist does not have to show that morality exists in every case without religion. Merely that religion and God are unrequired assumptions in some cases, which is exactly what has been done. Another thing which you announce so fallaciously is that this pointing to some examples in nature where morality appears to exist naturally without God or religion is not the same as saying we should base our morality on what happens in the animal kingdom. The two are not equatable, and you need to realize that.